This is Superior Sports Talk with Reggie Wilson and Luke Inman, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota, and it starts now.
What's happening, everybody? Reggie and Luke back in the lab with another episode of Superior Sports Talk presented by Locked On Sports Minnesota. What's going on, Reggie?
What's up, man? I'm feeling good, even though the Timberwolves didn't do it last night, man.
Yeah, we'll get into all of that for sure. Big time show lined up for you as Reggie and I break down Game 2 of the NBA playoff series and just what went wrong for those T-Wolves dropping last night's game to Memphis, 124-96. Later on, we're going to get into some what does it mean. I'm putting Reggie on the hot seat, talking Twins, Vikings, Wild, plenty more. Plus, so excited for today's guest, one of my favorite draft experts, Jeff Risdon from USA Today, helping us hone in on the Vikings draft weekend plans and a few of his favorite sleepers. It's all coming up on the Superior Sports Talk. All right, Reggie, you ready to dive right into this?
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
The Wolves took one on the chin last night, getting blown out by the Memphis Grizzlies, 124-96, led by who else? Ja Morant, who was one rebound away from a triple-double in the Grizzlies bench that outscored the Wolves 60-43. This was the Grizzlies team in performance I think a lot of people were waiting for, as you saw the depth and the complete balance of this roster with 7 players posting double-digit points, including Jaren Jackson and Desmond Bane, who took advantage of Ja Morant's just freaky ability to create plays for his offense. Not surprisingly, the Grizzlies showcased one of the league's best offenses, but I think fans got a glimpse of just how good this defense is for Memphis, really for the first time in the series, ranking 6th in the league in overall defense. And it just felt like it was that suffocating defense that fueled the Grizzlies' offense on the other side of the court. Anthony Edwards led the way for the Wolves, 20 points, but after that, Minnesota had little to respond with karl-anthony scoring just 15 points. And D'Angelo Russell, who I had on a big game, my X factor during yesterday's show, I'll admit when I'm wrong, comes up short with just 11. You're killing me, man. But Reggie, you watched it all start to finish. What was your biggest takeaways from Game 2 if you're a Wolves fan? I mean, where's the panic meter turned up to right now?
You know, you try not to panic too much after just one game, but Memphis totally flipped the script on the Wolves. It was so interesting because, you know, I talked about how Cat basically had Steven Adams in the paint like barbecue chicken. He only played 3 minutes last night. 3 minutes.
What was that? I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah,
what was that?
They switched up how they did things. They totally flipped the script on the Wolves. And it's funny because that game last night reminded you why Memphis finished with the second best record in the league. 30 games above 500 because they can just suffocate you like that. It was so interesting. We talked about yesterday, some of the keys to the game was the bench keeping up that performance. They didn't get much of anything from Jaden McDaniels, man. I saw him airballing threes. Like Malik Beasley, I think it was something like minus 24 when he was on the court. Like,
not great.
I mean, no, not what you're looking for. And it's just so funny. You talked about that bench, and a lot of people talked about how much depth that Memphis had coming off the bench, and they decided to employ a couple of their bigs with Clark and Tillman, and those dudes were eating inside. It was just so interesting. We saw like the Cat that was similar to the one we saw in the play-in game where he was just committing a bunch of silly fouls and really kind of complaining about a lot of things, didn't really get a chance to get into his game. And they took advantage, man. I saw a lot of clanked shots from the Timberwolves last night. Like, they missed so many shots. Like, I think at one point I tweeted Anthony Edwards was on his way to having like a Kobe stat line where he shot like 6 for 35 or something like that with 20-something points. And it was just kind of crazy to see. He was forcing things a little bit, wasn't really playing to his game. We saw D'Lo miss several shots that we usually see him making. Like, they were just out of sync. And it was funny looking at the box score. If you get the same type of production from the big three from the Wolves as you did in that last game, in Game 1, then you're talking about being able to keep up with this Memphis team. But, man, like, they swarmed you. They just like an avalanche from the Grizzlies last night. And I was just like, look, you got Jaren Jackson making threes. You got Ja Morant making threes. Like, look out, man. Like, that's how you just kind of know it's not your night. And it just kind of snowballed and got away from the Wolves really quickly.
I mean, we talked about it yesterday coming into this game. You just knew the Grizzlies were going to bring a different level of energy, set the tone early, and, getting stunned by double digits in game one at home, you knew they were going to come back with a vengeance. They were going to scratch and claw, bring everything they had to make sure they didn't head to the Target Center without a win, and they certainly did that. A total complete game from top to bottom for the Grizzlies. So, Reggie, with two kind of lopsided games now in the books, the question is, which one is the real Wolves team? Is it game one, or is it what we saw last night in game two?
I think it's somewhere in between the two. You know what I mean? Like, it's game one was what the Wolves look like when they're playing up to their full potential. Game two is what the Wolves look like when they are kind of feeling themselves a little bit. And it's funny because if you talk to people who cover the Wolves, they do have a issue with overconfidence sometimes. And they kind of came into Memphis like they were the team to beat, like they were those dudes. And it's like, look, you can feel like that all you want, but you got to back that up. You know what I mean? Like, you got to come out there and show and prove your mettle game in and game out. Like, it's the playoffs. It's what's decided. Now, look, in the playoffs, we see different things. Like, I remember watching the finals with the Warriors and the Cavs back in the day. It was just like there were games where the Warriors would blow the Cavs out in the finals. And then there were games where the Cavs would blow the Warriors out in the finals. And it's interesting. It's just two games, and you don't want to draw too much from just two games. But at the same time, it's just like, man, that's concerning. You saw a lot of things that if you're a Wolves fan, you're a little worried about, like looking at this stat line. Pat Bev was 1 for 6 in 29 minutes. D'Angelo Russell, 3 for 11 in 28 minutes. You got Jalen Noel coming off the bench. He was +7 with 6 points, but it didn't really impact the game that much. And it's funny because it's like, you got guys that are impacting the game off the bench. Like, the bench production was fine, but when you're getting outscored by 12, 13, 14 points by the other bench, then it's just like, what can you do, man? I just think they need to get back to playing Timberwolves basketball, playing to their game and not trying to out Memphis because, like, that team is strong. Like you're not about to, outdo them at their own game.
A big wake-up call for sure coming after that Game 1 victory. Things will not be easy. We'll see how the T-Wolves respond. I know you already touched on it, so I don't want to double-dip too much, but for me, a novice NBA, it was just so interesting. Memphis coach Taylor Jenkins pulled Steven Adams, like you said, physically imposing, big man, after just 3 minutes and went to his bench, and man, did it work. Again, the Grizzlies bench outscored the Wolves 60-43, had 4 bench players put up double digits, including former T-Wolf and Apple Valley native Tyus Jones, who put up 10 of his own. So Reggie, explain me, to a novice NBA fan compared to yourself, this little trick up the sleeve Jenkins pulled on the Wolves, playing more small ball and better speed and tempo, clearly had a big impact on the Wolves' final outcome and their efficiency.
Yeah, you saw Cat have a lot of foul trouble against some of these more younger athletic bigs. I mean, Steven Adams isn't that old, but he's just not. He's a little bit more of the traditional big, as opposed to guys like Tillman and Clark who can move a little bit. They're a little bit more agile, and we've seen that Cat has a little bit of issues sometimes because it's just like, no, I'm gonna out athletic you,
right?
And it's just like, no, Cat, just like, play your game. And it was just so interesting seeing that play out. Like, they got killed on the boards,
right?
Like, they got killed on the boards, and it was just interesting because it's like, look, there were guys in position. There were times where there were 2 Timberwolves around the basket, and somehow the one Grizzlies player that was there got the rebound over them. And it was just like, come on, man. Like, you can't do that. And especially with as many shots as they were missing last night, like, second chance buckets were at a premium, and they needed to be the ones making them. And it just wasn't happening, man. It was kind of tough to see that. Even when you saw, like, a little glimpse. They might go on a run or every time they tried to go on a run and tried to make this thing competitive, Memphis always had the answer. And what does that sound like? That sounded like game one in reverse. And so it was just interesting to see like the Timberwolves just not be able to keep up. When we talked about it going into that game, they have all the talent in the world to be able to keep up and even overcome the Grizzlies. But when they don't play to that ability and that level, that's the outcome you see.
I just want to know, do you think that kind of blueprint laid out to stop Karl-Anthony Towns that we saw in the play-on game against the Clippers had anything to do with what Coach Taylor Jenkins, the move he did, putting the bench guys in, the smaller guys, and pulled Steven Adams? And do you expect them to just, now that it worked, right, copy and paste that? I mean, should the Wolves and Cat expect that same game plan, you think, going into Game 3?
I think so. I mean, look, if I'm Cat, I'm like, okay, all right, I see what's going on here. I think in game one, he took advantage of, there was some just defense where Steven Adams, it was like, dude, where are you at? What's going on? And it's just so interesting how they decided to clog up the lanes a little bit more and challenge Cat to play a different game, and he kind of played into their hands. And I think what is good is now you've got 2 postseason games on film where they've clogged the lanes, and Cat talked about being a better passer, passing out of some of these things, not making some of these decisions that kind of gets him and the team into trouble. And that's something that they're going to have to go back on the drawing board and go back into the well, if you will, when they watch this film and they turn on the tape and they're like, dang, this is what beat us.
That's not fun.
Look, you see it. You've seen it twice now in the postseason, the play-in and in game 2. How are you going to respond? What are you going to do to offset that? Chris Finch appears to be a very, very capable and smart head coach. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how he goes back to the lab, draws up some things, and adjusts for game 3.
Bottom line, the dust is settled now. Despite last night, you still got to be awfully happy if you're a Wolves fan, leaving Memphis with a split, all tied up 1 game apiece. But it's like we talked about yesterday with momentum. Remember, the Grizzlies had lost 2 in a row going into last night. The Wolves, on the other hand, had won 5 of their last 7. But it's just crazy how quickly that momentum can just feel like it's already shifted now as they head back to Minnesota to play games 3 and 4 inside the Target Center. For the Wolves, their first playoff game at home since 2018 and just 3rd series since 2004. Target Center will no doubt be rocking, providing an electric atmosphere. Thursday night tip-off, 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Reggie's going to be there, and Reggie and I will both be here Friday to break down all the action. All right, coming up, I'm putting Reggie through the gauntlet with what does it mean. But first, the NFL draft is just 8 days away. I'm getting amped because today's guest is one of my all-time favorite draft experts, and all-around just great dude. He covers the NFL draft for Real GM, along with lead editor for the Lions Wire and co-host of the Detroit Lions podcast. Follow him on Twitter at Jeff Risdon. Let's bring him in now, my good friend Jeff. Thanks so much for joining us. How you been, man?
It is great to see you again, Luke. It's been too long. It's good to be on your show. Thanks for having me in, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, man. So many of you don't know this. My nickname for Jeff is the Godfather of Draft because you see, no, listen, when I was a young pup starting out in the draft world, made my very first trip to Mobile, Alabama to cover the Senior Bowl. It was Big Jeff here. It took me under his wing. He showed me the ropes. And on top of that, shared just a bevy of draft knowledge that just blew me away. And it was at that point I knew this guy's for real. And for me and my money, he's the Godfather of draft. Jeff, maybe you don't remember it that way, but that's my version anyways. I play in my head. So
I'm glad you remember it that way. That's nice.
It's something like that. All right, let's jump right into it, Jeff. You've been around the block. You've seen many drafts come and go. You've done all the research, watched the tape. When it comes to this year's 2022 class versus maybe years past, what makes this group unique or stand out that you can say is maybe, the identity of this class as a whole?
Yeah, there's a couple things. First off, there's no surefire home run hit at pretty much any position, which is crazy. I cover the Detroit Lions at number 2. Like, we don't know what they're going to do. And I think the uncertainty at the top, we don't know who's going 1. We have no idea who's going 2, 3, 4, 5. it's crazy. The other thing is, and this is an unusual year because of the pandemic and so many guys taking an extra year, there's more overaged prospects this year. So you've got more baseline information on all these guys, which for some teams, and the Vikings would fall into this, for teams that are age dependent and age reliant on their drafting, especially in the first round, which is certainly what you're going to get.
Right.
They might have to bend some guardrails this year. I know the Cleveland Browns are doing that. They normally would not draft anybody over age 21 in the first round. Well, do they adjust to that this year? That's that. And the other thing is you're seeing a lot more guys who have a lot more experience. Does that make them more NFL ready than in past years, even like into day 2 and early day 3? And I think that's going to happen too.
Jeff, Vikings have new GM, new head coach, and a shiny number 12 overall draft pick. There's been so many people trying to guess at what the Vikings do at 12, and I think it's kind of dependent on who's there. You know, a lot of people are linking Stingley to them, but Stingley may be gone before they pick at 12. What do you feel like is the best and worst case scenario for when they select?
You know, I think the best case is if Kyle Hamilton falls.
Yes.
That's your guy.
Yes.
Okay.
No question about it. He's my number 1 overall player.
Love it.
And as much as the Lions at 2 need a safety, I don't think they're taking him. I don't think they're even considering him. It's plausible that he could fall to 12. He's more likely to be there at 12 than Stingley is, quite honestly. Even though, look, I'm not a huge Stingley guy. The Liz Frank injury, that's like repellent, man. Get that away from me. I don't want anything to do with that. It doesn't mean that he would be a bad pick. It's just that you're taking on some risks there that I'm personally not comfortable with, and not everybody is going to see it that way. But he's, I think he's gone. I think he's going to one of the New York teams, and I think Sauce Gardner is going to the other New York team. You got 4, 5, 7, and 10 all in New York.
Right.
I think both of those guys are gone there. So you're looking at Hamilton's ideal if a guy like Jermaine Johnson falls. Like I can be tucked into doing that to help build up the pass rush depth. Beyond that, like there's not a lot of bad choices. Like you're going to get a good player there. I'm not too worried about what they might be able to find there.
Yeah, Jeff, with these first-round picks, so much pressure on the GMs and coaches to hit. You can't miss, and that's why I'm glad you brought up some of those red flags about Derek Stingley that maybe fans should start to consider there with the 12th overall pick. We all know the top names. You just mentioned a handful of them getting flung out in those top 15 picks, but I always love finding the value guys on day 2, the Eric Kendricks, Dalvin Cooks, Danielle Hunters. Who's some of your favorite second and third round prospects you think could have a great NFL career despite maybe not having that first round buzz?
Yeah, a couple guys. I love Roger McCreary, the cornerback from Auburn. I don't care that his arms are short. I don't care that his hands are tiny. That guy can ball. If you watch the Alabama-Auburn game, he was the best player on the field playing defense.
Wow. Love it.
Look, he does have some limitations, but, man, I'm very bullish on Roger McCreary, and I think he's a guy that's going to go in the 30s, early 40s, and I love that. Go a little bit deeper. I'm a big fan of Luke Godeki out of Central Michigan.
Yeah.
Offensive lineman, I love the path for him. He's played left tackle. He's played guard. He comes in as your number 6 lineman as a rookie, and then he plays wherever you need him in 2023. He can play center and start it capably at any of those positions. I love that kind of guy. That's the sort of guy that I want to build around. He's really, really solid player. I'm also a big fan, and this is going a little bit deeper, and he's not going to go day 2. He should, but he won't. DeMarco Jackson, linebacker from Appalachian State.
Yeah.
You watch their game against Louisiana the second time they played them. Probably the best linebacker game I saw all season. He doesn't always play to that level, but man, that guy downhill thumper. If you can get him in the 4th, 5th round, give me that.
All right, Vikings fans, that's your key. Listen in.
Yeah.
Those guys, maybe some guys that your team targets in day 2. All right. So, Jeff, I wanted to do some quick superlatives with you. You ready for this?
Yeah, sure. Fire away.
All right. Who is the best arm talent in this draft?
Ooh, arm. It's got to be Malik Willis.
Right.
He doesn't have touch with it, but arm strength and the ability to do things that other guys can't do, that's Malik.
Yeah, it's kind of like Kaepernick in that way.
Very much so.
Best route runner.
Chris Olave.
I agree,
I like that, Jeff. Stepping up. I like that.
So I used to cover Ohio State, And I know a lot of people have Garrett Wilson over Olave, but I think Olave is a stud.
Not me, man. I'm with you. And as somebody who went to high school in Columbus, I always follow the Buckeyes. So Northland High School represent.
Exactly. There we go. All right, the biggest hitter, the biggest thumper.
Ooh, Devin Lloyd's really good, but I'll go a little bit deeper. Malcolm Rodriguez from Oklahoma State. Inside linebacker. He's a day 3 guy. That guy demonizes people when he hits him. You know you've been hit by Malcolm Rodriguez.
I love this.
I love it when you talk draft to me. Okay.
I love it.
Best home run threat.
Oh, man. If I trusted that Christian Watson could catch the ball, he would be it.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
But outside of that, man, Jameson Williams is
absolutely.
Like you can't go wrong with Jameson Williams there.
No doubt.
Absolutely. St. Louis, stand up. All right, last one. The biggest Swiss Army knife, the most versatile guy in this draft.
Ooh, Godeki is actually, as an offensive lineman, is one of them. But like Treylon Burks, man, he can play. He can line up as your fullback. He can play as an H-back. He can play slot. He can play outside wide receiver. He's so good, man. I know he's not going to fit for everybody, and it's going to take a creative offensive mind to use him. And I really like Treylon Burks a lot.
Jeff, I'm so glad you just brought him up here right at the end, because after watching what Deebo Samuel did in the playoffs, it just seems like for me, the blueprint is laid out now. So many of these offensive mind coaches around the NFL are going to try to copy and paste that Deebo Samuel role. And it just seems like Treylon Burks is the easy kind of simple fit for that if you're trying to draft one of those guys. And I know he's a guy that's, projected around the late teens, early 20s, but because of the Deebo Samuel hype, I feel like maybe he could end up going a lot earlier than that and surprise some people on draft weekend. All right, one more here, Jeff. Let's sneak in a little bit of Lions, a little bit NFC North before we get you out of here. Maybe some of your favorite or best Lions picks over the last few years, like a few under the radar national guys that Vikings fans can get to know and remember when they're tuning into Vikings Lions games next year.
Yeah, I think you all know Amon-Ra St. Brown, the sun god, pretty well. He fits into the Treylon Burks role that we were just talking about. The Lions got him some backfield work. Like that's the wave. That guy's really good. He's going to be good for a very long time. They had an undrafted guy last year, Jerry Jacobs, outside cornerback. He unfortunately got injured at the end of the year. He might miss the beginning of the year. This guy is an NFL starter at outside cornerback, and they got him undrafted out of Arkansas and Arkansas State. That guy can really play. He's a good one. He's a keeper. Aleem McNeil, nose tackle, third rounder last year. Really, really good. He made the all-rookie team. He deserved it. He's kind of an athletic dancer. This guy played center field in baseball for North Carolina State. Wow. Was good enough to get recruited at that. And now he's a 325-pound nose tackle. He never lost the agility. I'm a big fan of Aleem McNeil. Really, really good player. I'm trying to think of who else. Frank Ragnow. Everybody in Minnesota should know Frank Ragnow.
No doubt. No doubt.
And we're very excited to have him back after a year off of injury. Under the radar. I'll give you another one. And this is another undrafted guy who wound up as tight end 2 last year. And entering the season, he's still there. Brock Wright out of Notre Dame.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Pretty good receiving tight end. Kind of limited athletically, but that's a guy that, they just brought him back. The arrow's pointing up for that guy. And that is a certain need. I would like to see them get somebody better than Brock Wright, but as of right now, they seem pretty comfortable with him riding in there. So
yeah, a great handful of names there for Vikings fans to remember, again, watching and tuning into the NFC North and those Vikings-Lions matchups. All right, last one. I love your mock drafts because it's what you would do, not what you're projecting. So finally, before we get you out of here, you're the GM of the Lions at 2. Obviously, it depends who goes 1, but what's your plan A scenario for the second pick for the Detroit Lions next weekend?
Aiden Hutchinson, no matter what.
No doubt. Figure it out.
On the paper.
Figure it out. Yeah.
Keep him home, huh?
Keep him home. Hometown boy. Hometown hero. I love it. Jeff, I could literally pick your brain and talk draft and NFC North just about all day. We'll get you out of here. I just want to thank you so much for coming on, and make sure everyone listening is following Jeff and all his work on Twitter at Jeff Risdon. Jeff, anything coming out leading up to draft week we should keep our eyes peeled for, or any special draft coverage next weekend we should tune into?
I just got a ton of stuff coming. I do have the what I would do mock draft. It should be up at Real GM soon. I do the first 3 rounds. I'm at pick 79 right now, so I'm getting there, man. close. Just there's a lot of fun stuff. If you like to watch me talk, the Detroit Lions podcast, we do it every Wednesday night. We're going live tonight. We will have former Lion great Herman Moore on to help break down the draft. Great guy, friend of the show. We have a lot of fun with that, and it's just great. And I say that I'm coming to you from Kirk Cousins' hometown, Holland, Michigan. It's difficult to hate Kirk when you're around all the people that love him.
It's got to be tough. Follow him on Twitter. So much great stuff from Jeff. Follow him on Twitter again, @Jeff Risdon. Thanks so much, Jeff. You're the man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks,
all right.
Thanks, Jeff.
Right. Take care, Jeff.
Right.
Jeff Risdon, again, @GM on Twitter. So much great work. He does those What Would I Do mock drafts. Reggie, does Jeff bring the heat or what? What's your biggest takeaway after listening to Jeff break all that draft and Lions stuff?
You know, it's so funny. You could tell how locked in a guy is that he didn't bring up really any of their premium picks when you asked them about when you asked him about guy, like I thought, him saying that he's a Columbus guy, I thought for sure he might bring up Jeff Okudah.
Right. Taylor Decker, Ohio State left tackle.
Yeah,
easy choices. Yeah.
He didn't. So I commend him for his knowledge. That dude is locked in.
Jeff, again, do you get it? The godfather of draft now? Why I pegged him that?
Yeah.
Jeff's the man. Maybe we can get him on one more time before draft weekend. Okay. The time has come. My favorite part of the show. I'm putting Reggie on the hot seat, covering all the latest hot topics in Minnesota sports called What Does It Mean? Let's jump right into it. First up, the Twins lost last night to the Royals in their opening game series, 4-3, after Tyler Duffy came in the sixth inning and allowed the eventual go-ahead runs. Reggie, what does it mean for the Twins bullpen if you're the coaching staff trying to just assess what we've seen so far through these first few weeks of the season? Where's this panic meter at?
I think it's high, man. I think we've seen enough to see through the first couple weeks, like, they got a bullpen problem. Mm-hmm. And I think what's funny is it's like, man, okay, you want to just maybe try to ride out the wave and see what happens. But honestly, I think we've seen enough to see that in high leverage situations, like they just can't get it done. And it's tough. It's like they have all these championship expectations. When the bats are doing what they're supposed to do, 3-1 lead last night, there was some issues that kind of came forth, some bad decisions on base running and things like that maybe could have ballooned the lead a little bit more and gave them a little bit more of a cushion. But it's just like, why are you in every game just hoping to establish like a big cushion just in case the bullpen doesn't do what they're supposed to do? And I think that's the issue here. I think they're going to have to bring in some reinforcements if they truly believe that they are a contender this year, which remains to be seen because they haven't strung along enough games of wins yet this season. I understand they're still figuring things out. But, man, when you got these good contributions from the starters, as we've seen, you can't be winning like every other couple of days. Like, you got to actually like get it done. And last night was such a winnable game against a beatable opponent. And somehow they allowed it to slip through their hands.
Yeah.
That is frustrating. I saw a lot of people on Twitter just giving them the business for that performance last night.
It's one thing if you just got to worry about these relievers and middle inning guys and bullpen, but when you're still trying to figure out your starting pitching rotation with new guys, Archer, Sonny Gray's got a hammy, from top to bottom, it's almost just too much. And I know it's a long season. It's a marathon, not a sprint, but dealing with both the starting rotation and trying to mask and put a lot of Band-Aids on this relieving situation is almost just too much for this coaching staff to handle. All right. Many fans will tell you the Minnesota Wild have no choice but to retain Kevin Fiala, as he's carried the team on his back this last stretch of the season. However, with their current cap situation as it is, what does it mean for the chances the Wild front office can't find a way to get a deal done? Like, what's your percentage chance here that they retain Kevin Fiala on a big long-term contract?
It's just so funny, man. When they got Marc-Andre Fleury, we were all talking to Bill Guerin, and we were like, man, all right, now that you got Flower, like, okay, what are we doing for, the next year? He's like, man, can we just enjoy this right now? And it's funny because, like, that's what they need to do. And they also need to maximize this talent because we may be seeing the last of this roster looking like it's looking right now. And it's cool to see contributions from guys like Matt Boldy, 15th goal of the season scored yesterday. Like, it's just like, cool, great. But honestly, trying to keep a guy like Kevin Fiala is going to force them to make a decision with the cap situation. As much as I hate to say it, like, they're going to have to make a decision between Fiala and Matt Dumba. Do you want Fiala, who's an elite offensive player and who can score you a bunch of goals, or do you want Matt Dumba, who can score goals, but he's an elite defensive player? And also, he's had some injury troubles this year, which causes you a little bit of concern. But the dude is like an ultimate team glue guy. He's a great player to have in the locker room. Ultimate ambassador, all of these different initiatives that the league is doing to push forward diversity efforts. Like, having a guy like Matt Dumba on your team is a luxury. But it's like, okay, now you got to choose, because it's like, look, the money is not growing on trees. So it's like, okay, do you retain Dumba, or do you maybe try to deal him and make an investment like, okay, we're just going to go all in on scoring as many goals as possible and try to beat teams that way? But it's just like a talent like Fiala, you hate to lose him.
Reggie, I know you're still kind of settling in the big picture here in Minnesota, but you think the Minnesota Twitter fan base was a little upset last night after they blew a 3-1 lead to the Royals? If they don't retain Fiala, you're going to hear it on Twitter, because those fans will not be happy one bit if they can't retain this guy. He's just been such an impact for this team down the stretch.
Fans wanted a situation where they could keep both. I know there was a lot of fans yesterday. They're like, keep both. And it's like, dude, I don't think that's possible. So you're going to have to choose one or the other.
Yeah, turn the cap off, Matt.
Exactly.
Just turn the injuries off. Yeah, no problem. All right, last one. What does it mean with Reggie? Vikings' new head coach Kevin O'Connell spoke to the media yesterday about how impressed he's been with Kirk Cousins being a more vocal leader in team meetings and out on the practice field early on. What does it mean for Kirk's ability to transfer that newfound leadership role over to wins during the regular season? And what does it mean for the new partnership and relationship between the new head coach and the QB?
It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It means that we might see a new Kirk this season, a different Kirk. I think we've gotten a chance to see the gamer Kirk Cousins several times. Last year specifically was that game against Carolina, when he walked it off with that incredible touchdown pass to KJ Osborne in overtime. Like, we need to see more of that guy, not the Kirk Cousins that drops back on 3rd and 10 and he pushes it out 4 yards and they have to punt. Like, we can't see any more of that Kirk Cousins. And it's interesting because when I talked to Kevin O'Connell earlier this month, I asked him, I said, look, do you feel like Kirk has another gear to go, another level to reach in your offense? And he said, I do. And he's going to hold Kirk to higher standards than maybe the past coaching staff did. And what's interesting, though, is when I brought up the whole, can't go broke making a profit mindset that Kirk seems to have, Kevin O'Connell mentioned, okay, maybe we don't put the offense in those situations. Okay, maybe, if it's 3rd and 4, and Kirk does make the decision to do the 4-yard, pass, that's a first down. And it's like, he wants to put Kirk in a better position to succeed on the field, to extend drives. And I think that's where, philosophically, I think we're going to see a different Vikings offense this year. And I'm excited to see what it looks like, because last year, fans complained, we complained in the media, 3rd and 12, 2nd and 14, all that. Kirk is going to, whatever the best read is, he's going to do that. I think what Kevin O'Connell is going to challenge him to do is to be a little bit more aggressive on some of these plays and push the ball down the field. I mean, he has elite playmakers on the outside. And Irv Smith coming back healthy is going to be another addition that should be good for the offense. Like a healthy Dalvin Cook, he has all the playmakers on the field to make it 2nd and 3rd and manageable each and every drive. And I think what we're going to see is Kirk maximizing his ability on these drives, with Kevin O'Connell making things a little bit easier for him on the offensive end.
Yeah, a lot of great points there, Reggie. I think, in the NFL, these players, they get to a certain point in their career, a certain age, but especially quarterbacks, right? And, from year to year, physically, they don't get any better. If anything, they deteriorate, right? Like Kirk Cousins' arm isn't going to be better next year. He's not going to be able to throw the ball 10 yards further. He's not going to be faster, but it's the intangibles. That's what can get better and sharper from year to year. The field awareness, digesting the playbook, being a vocal leader, right? That true captain. And I'm just very interested, again, to see the relationship between this new offensive-minded head coach, Kevin O'Connell, and what he does with Kirk Cousins. All right, he survived the gauntlet once again. Join us tomorrow previewing Game 3, playoff game with the Wolves and Memphis Grizzlies, back at home at the Target Center. Tip-off 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we'll be talking more NFL draft just 8 days away. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and join us every day for another episode covering all the biggest topics in Minnesota sports. He's Reggie Wilson. Follow him on Twitter at Reggie Wilson TV and on KARE11. I'm Luke Inman on Twitter at Luke_Spinman. Tune in tomorrow to Superior Sports Talk, part of the Locked On Sports Minnesota. For Reggie, I'm Luke. Until tomorrow. Signing
Be
out.
blessed. Spread love today.
This is Superior Sports Talk with Reggie Wilson and Luke Inman, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota.